or whatever,
Do you feel like that relates to you like wanting to stay out of the city now? Like that you put so much work in the city that like you just like to be calm and reminisce, and not that you don't like to be in the city, but just does that have a lot of how you were in the city and hitting up clubs every night now, like just a reflection?
I mean, I'm almost 48. I'll be
Okay.
50 in a couple of years. I mean, it's not going to be the same of when I was in my 20s or even
Right.
30s,
Right.
or even teenage years. I mean, that was a different time. Of course, like you said, you reflect on those times, and we had good memories. And I'm still in touch with a lot of friends that I danced with. Some of them don't dance anymore. Um, but I'm still very much connected with dance, Maybe
Mhm.
I'm not in that space anymore, but like I'm, being that I'm teaching and connected with the younger generation and being creative and, like we had mentioned before, making videos or any content and stuff like that.
Yeah.
As long as I'm still connected in that sense, like I don't even know what's going on much anymore, like as far as events and stuff like that. Even in India, I was just by the end, the last couple of years, I was just focusing on my own stuff
Okay.
and not so much into like events and stuff. But I mean, at one time, like, especially in New York, I'd go to like the events and the battles and stuff, the house dance conference, and then we had Rocksteady and, those things. I was always so involved. Dance was it. I just lived in that dance bubble in New York, and
Yeah.
even when I went to India, yeah.
So from so you
Oh, yeah, yeah.
it's never like I never get calls after. It's always during something. So
So I
so
think
yeah, so you
somebody left a message. You can talk a bit about club dancers versus
versus YouTube battle.
YouTube.
Yeah.
I didn't get it. It kind of like rolled up,
Oh
so I
yeah.
didn't see
Yeah,
what it
yeah,
said.
sorry. Yeah, you can talk a bit about club dancers like yourself versus YouTube battle dancers like those in India who haven't had the same access to the same experiences as you.
Yeah, I mean, again, this is that club culture in India doesn't really exist like how it exists over here, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's not that every club has these club dancers, but we would go towards like certain parties or certain DJs, certain nights. There's like, oh, okay, and all the dancers would be like hitting at that party, and we knew where to go, So it's just part of the culture, right?
Right.
I think, yeah, and in Europe, I mean, they have some of that too, but like, spending so much time in India, like that didn't exist there. It's still very much Bollywood music, or even if it's hip hop, it's like it'll be like commercial hip hop from like 5 to 10 years ago. So it's yeah, it's kind of like outdated stuff. Not, I don't want to say outdated, but it's like the same. It's like listening to the radio
Yeah.
like 10 years ago, something like that. So it things are changing, but in India, it's like it's all about events. So people practice for the events. They don't have that social aspect, like, oh, let's go to this party Friday night, at this place,
Interesting.
and like everybody gets down. It doesn't have that, but it's understandable because it's not really the culture there, right? It's just been a culture that's been adopted, you know. So, I mean, when I was there in the early stages, I used to have a party out there called Blame It on the Boogie, and that was like a weekly party, and I did it for like 6 months. It was free for the community, but then it became a lot of work, and I
Yeah.
was like, after 6 months, I was like, okay, it's done. I ended up paying out of my own pocket more than anything, so I was like, yeah, I'm just you know tried it out. You know, I'm not really an organizer or an event coordinator. I mean, I tried, dabbling my fingers in it, but yeah,
Yeah.
I'll stick to I'll
It's a
stick to the
lot.
dance. It's a
Yeah,
lot,
no.
yeah,
It
yeah,
really
yeah.
is. There's the before, there's the during, and there's the after, and yeah, it's a lot to take in. So even doing something for 6 months, at least you tried, and at least that helped somebody within that. So I think that's what people need to give themselves a little credit for, is trying to provide that experience for people. And there could be, like there could be somebody on this stream who wants to do something like that and provide an experience more than just an event.
Yeah, because I wanted to give that like that kind of underground, New York, DC feel over there. So they, and it was like I think it was on a Tuesday or Wednesday night. It was like a weeknight, weekday night. And it was luckily the guy he provided the place. He's like, don't worry about it. But you know how dancers are. Dancers don't pay for anything, no drinks, nothing. So he wasn't really making
Yeah.
money, though he was quite supportive about it. He was like, I think it was the club was called Cool Chef, yeah. Blame it
Okay.
on the boogie at Cool Chef, yeah. And he's like, yeah, after 6 months, he's like, hey, business is not really happening, yeah. So, and
Right.
we had like, I had different events. I had like Valentine's battle, like couples battle, and I would have like sometimes some of my friends from abroad would come, so I'd be like, special DJ from this or whatever, or somebody
Yeah.
a host. But Jardy came out there, so I had
Oh,
him
nice.
hosting, and different people. Yeah, Prem. Do you know? I don't know if you know Prem.
I don't think
He's
so.
okay.
No.
He's from the Bay Area, but he was kind of like I think it was one of the first people that worked with Red Bull. He had Red Bull Beat Riders or something, I think it was called.
Okay. Okay.
And
I
he came
remember
out
that.
there, so I had had him come. So just different people that would come, stuff like that. So you know,
So
so
as far as, yeah, go
yeah.
ahead. No.
No, no, no. I also would before the party. I also would do like sometimes workshops, like free workshops for the students and
Okay.
stuff. So half an hour, 45 minutes. So
At the event center.
at, at the before the party, like at the
Oh,
club, but then, like right
okay.
before the party started, it would be
Yeah.
like kind of like like the salsa community. Sometimes they have like free half an hour class,
Right.
and
Right.
then
Right.
push into so that's where the idea came from. So I was like,
Okay.
okay, like way of getting people more involved in it too. Yeah.
So let's take it back a little bit, because I want to talk about, just going on from graduating college and then getting in more to either it was work, like career, theater, was it battling, was it teaching? Just talk a little bit about maybe that mid 90s into the early 2000s, like what got you catapulted into your career.
Yeah. So again, 93 to 98, I went to university, Virginia Commonwealth University, and I studied
Okay.
dance. I got a degree, got a BFA, Bachelor's of Fine Arts,
Nice.
from that school. And then, so daytime, it was like, studying going to these classes and getting kinesiology and dance history and all that stuff. And also the dance classes. And then night times, it was either going to like local clubs or parties or practice in the studio. So luckily we had access to the studio. So
Yeah.
I had a couple of my friends and we just trained every night till the studio closed. And then weekends would be going to the clubs up in DC.
Okay.
And then, excuse me, and then I graduated in 98 and I left to move to New York. But before that transition, I worked with a hip hop theater company, Pure Movement, Rennie Harris.
Rennie.
Maybe you heard.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
he's
Rennie.
he's been there for a long time. So
Years, man.
I
He's put
worked
in a
with
lot of work.
yeah, he's like still like a big mentor to me.
Yeah.
So
I
I
only
think he was
met
out
him
there on
once, I
the
think,
West
in
Coast.
Arizona. Like he was just
Okay.
there, obviously doing his stuff, connecting with people. Like I think he was really involved in the college network at the time.
Yeah,
Um, and
yeah. He was connected with the college, but he was also very well connected with the dance festivals. So
okay. Yeah.
that's actually how I met Rennie Harris. Is because of the dance school I went to, there was summer programs like American Dance Festival and Bass Dance Festival, Colorado Dance Festival. Maybe you heard of Colorado Dance Festival. So there would be these dance festivals, but it was predominantly um, like the modern dance choreographers and teachers, right?
Okay.
So at one time, at Bass Dance Festival, they had Rennie Harris and some of the company members were there. And then that's when I went and I connected with them and I went for his class. And he saw that was like a club head, but it was also doing like the modern dance stuff. So,
Right.
so yeah, it was soon after that, like right before we graduated college, I think. Or was it? Okay, I don't remember exact time period, but around before I moved to New York, that I worked with him and on this musical called Roman Jules. So it was like hip hop Romeo and Juliet. So
Oh, okay.
it was really cool. It was really cool. Then, but I decided to soon after just to move to New York. It was like I was thinking about staying in Philly and working with him, but then I was like, okay, I'm moving to New York, going for the Big Apple,
Yeah.
you know. And coming from a small town like Richmond, Virginia, it was a bit overwhelming, like, okay, Richmond all the way to New York City and stuff like that. So, yeah, I mean, once I got there, I got a job working at restaurants, because that's what we were taught at the universities. Like, you gotta have like a little side job, and then you gotta like, go for the auditions and stuff. So
Right.
that's what I did, going for the auditions, and I started getting booking jobs. And at that time also we didn't have agents, right? There was no Block or Clear Talent and all this agencies. It was kind of like you had to fend for yourself.
Wow. Yeah. I never knew that. I thought, agencies have been around for a while, but wow.
No, not in New York. I'm sure in LA, but not
Right.
not in not in New York, not at that time. So, I mean, I remember had to read. I think the newspaper was called The Voice. I don't know. I don't remember. Like it's
Okay.
been so long. But
Yeah.
that's where
Yeah.
you would go. I think it was called the New York Voice or something, and that's where you would go look for auditions. And then
Okay.
I remember
You have to
that's
pull out
how
the yellow pages and try to find.
yeah, yeah, kind of. That's how you have to look in the newspaper, and that's how we got like my jobs and
That was your
stuff. And
Google. That was your Google.
at that time, yeah. And then, you start connecting with people and people tell you about this. And before you know it, like I remember I was going for practices, then I had auditions. Then I realized this job I was having working at the restaurant wasn't for me. It was just like I was exhausted by the end of the shift. Like
Mm.
this is not going to sustain me for too long. So then I, uh, I remember going to the gyms
Okay.
like Crunch Fitness and all that.
Okay.
So then I started teaching at these gyms, and then later went to like the dance schools because I knew that I needed to make as much money as possible, but spend as least amount of time, and also do something that I enjoy. So I was
Right.
like, okay, dance classes is great. So I wasn't a very experienced dance teacher at all that time. I had to like figure it out as I went along.
Hmm.
But I was like, so it worked out that way. So, I'd be teaching classes during the week. Then it gave me room to like go for the auditions and if I had a project or gig, whatever, then we would have the rehearsals. Then we would have practice. Then we would go to the club. So it was like the minute you got up, there was something happening till it was time to go to bed. And for most of that time, I lived kind of far from like the city. So Manhattan being the city, I lived deep in Brooklyn or Queens, and it'd be like,
Wow.
so it's not like I could just go home and get lunch. And like
Right.
when I was out, you're out for the day. So if you had some spare hours here and there, you had to like use it productively. Maybe there was a practice, or maybe you just go watch a movie, or just chill with some friends, get something to eat, and that was your whole day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
So
you got to take the train back and forth, and that's not something. It's you don't have a car that you can just get somewhere easily to like you could in Richmond, right?
no,
Like that
no,
was
no. Yeah, forget about the car thing. Yeah, it was
yeah,
all
right.
the Metro card, I think it was called, the subway card. Yeah, and yeah, I was like on a tight budget, at least for the first year when I lived in New York for 7.5 years, but the first year it was like eating pizza was like all I could afford.
Yeah.
And I would have like luckily where I lived, I remember coming back from the club late at night, 3, 4, 5 in the morning, and the guy down the street was super cool. So instead of throwing the donuts away, he would give it to me. So I'd have a bag full of Dunkin' Donuts, and that'd be like before going to sleep, pop a few of those, and wake up in the morning. That was breakfast, and then you know back to the city.
Right.
Continue the journey. It was just that hustle, that New York hustle.
So, what was like your first big gig that you were like, wow, like I'm doing this?
well, I had a few big gigs. Okay, well, the first dance company that, the first like week or two that I was in New York, I auditioned for a company, Ron Brown Evidence.
Okay.
Uh, in the modern dance community, people know he's a pretty big name. So I wasn't like a core company member, but I was an apprentice, and for me
Okay.
that was like enough. But I realized I worked with him for a couple months, and I was like, it was difficult because I wasn't making money off of it. So as much as I'd love to continue being part of the company, I was like, I have to find work. I have to
Yeah.
like at the end of the
Gotta
day,
eat.
I got tired of just eating pizza every day. So as much as I love pizza, but yeah, pizza, garlic knots on a daily basis, I needed to switch my diet. So
Yeah.
yeah, unfortunately I had to like not work with the company, and then but then the next my first big music video was working with an artist. She was like a one hit wonder.
Okay.
So her name was Debla Morgan.
Okay.
I don't know if you know of her, but there's a music video somewhere online, and but it was like that summertime one hit. If you heard that song, you're like, oh yeah, yeah, I remember that song. But
Right.
she wasn't like a big artist, but I worked with some big dancers in the industry. One of them being Voodoo Ray.
Okay.
Yeah, so yeah, we
Yeah.
worked
Yeah.
together. It was me, Voodoo Ray, this guy named Anthony from the Amount Boys. I don't know if you know Amount Boys. They were like,
I think I've heard of them.
yeah, so, and I think a couple of other people. So yeah, we ended up like choreographing the little hip hop section in there. You see me for a good few seconds and stuff dancing, and so that was like it was a cool experience. It was first music video, and I had a good time. Like it was a nice introduction to the music video space, and then from there I did several more. I did like I think 7 or 8 more music videos in New York. Like you had mentioned, KRS One,
Right.
uh, Raw Digga, Fantasia. Fantasia was another
Oh,
big one.
Fantasia. Yeah.
Yeah,
American Idol. Yeah, and you've got some commercials and some other stuff.
yeah. So it was like a lot of music videos, dancing. Pardon me?
Oh no, I think somebody.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry, I think it cut up.
No.
So yeah, the music videos and then dancing for like artists, doing some like company work with modern companies or
Okay.
theater companies. Just I think as a freelance artist, you can't really stick to one thing, and then you have to like, you know, be like a bit of a chameleon, like being able to do different dance forms and being able to do different kinds of work projects and you know yeah, so you have to be quite diversified, diverse.
Diverse.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, it
you
seems
have to
like
be.
you had to, obviously, with choosing to have a degree and learning all these different, like you said, your first class, one of your classes was Western African dance, and having to take ballet, even though like you're already exposed, and those foundations are important.
Yeah,
Slinky,
for me,
yes,
Clay, just to add to what you're saying, but like as far as like the foundation, honestly, like a West African dance class that really helped me a lot because I saw
mm,
the connection between a lot of those dances with house dancing,
wow,
you know.
right,
So I was like, okay. In house they call it this, but but I remember because I took class before African dance, I saw so much of the connection and stuff, right? So I was like, oh, it's the same step, but they're calling it different. The groove is a little different, you know. And yeah, yeah. So I always tell people like, if foundation class, I was like, go for a West African dance class or go for a specific African dance class. It's like, you'll see definitely the connection there.
right,
Yeah.
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 I've loved, and I go back to. I remember one of our first interviews was with Buddha Stretch,
Yeah.
2011 at Hip Hop International, and hearing him talk about there was no more hip hop clubs and going to the house clubs and learning and seeing those moves applied. So that's why, like, when I talk about the East Coast, and when I talk about just the foundations, there's so much like cultural foundation that you guys have been able to learn, and obviously either from your family roots or from classes that you've taken or friends that you've made, and like going over and trying new food, like just all these different things that the U.S. has provided to have these experiences for you.
Yeah.
Like again, going from Richmond, Virginia up to New York, and experiencing that, it's cool to see that fusion.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think that's a great thing about living in a country like the U.S. or Canada. There's so many people from so many different backgrounds, right? So
Yeah.
you learn so much from everybody. It's like, before going, like I remember before going to Vietnam, I was exposed. One of my good friends was Vietnamese, and I was like exposed to so much the food and the culture, stuff like that. So it wasn't such big culture shocks when I would go to these new places because I was already had these exposures, right?
Right.
You know. But I got to say, when I first moved to India, I was definitely overwhelmed. Like it was, it was like no other place. I was like, my God, you know.
Yeah, it's got to be. So we got a comment from my boy Slinky up in Salt Lake, and
Okay.
he's putting in a lot of work too. But he says it's crazy the amount of struggle and work you had to put in back then. It's bittersweet how easy it is now. So the youth have a chance without those struggles, but that struggle makes you work harder. So
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it does. And I mean, you're just in it because you're so passionate about it, right? Um, obviously, uh, people paved the way for me too, being in the States. But I remember, when going to India, I was the one who had to pave the way over there.
mm-hmm.
You know, they didn't have access to all this information at all. So it's like somebody had to start something somewhere. So yeah, I think the first person or the beginnings and stuff definitely has to take that time. It's a lot of energy, and you really got to do it because you love it. And it obviously gets easier and easier for the next generation, but then also it gets more and more competitive too, right?
Yeah.
So that's another um, yeah, drawback or aspect of it. So yeah.
Wow. So in terms of like the New York experience, obviously growing in that, um, let's go to like the YouTube era. Were you in India already when you started doing the YouTube, or were you still in the US?
Well, I went to okay, 2003 is when I went to India.
Okay.
I went there to just to check out the scene. I was curious. I had only gone to India once when I was a kid, and I didn't really like it. I was like, I don't know if I have you been to
I
India?
haven't. No. Want to
Okay,
go.
okay. So it could be hard. It's kind of like a place like you love it, you hate it, or maybe it's kind of both. It was very difficult, I remember at that time. So I went again with a more open mind when I was like 27 years old, 27 or 28, 2003. And I went there and I went to where my family's from, Calcutta, Calcutta City. And then I had this contact to go teach in Mumbai City for this big guy out there and stuff. So I went there, taught. They had no clue about any of the things I was teaching. And I was like,
Mm.
okay, cool. Like in the back of my head, I was thinking, okay, I definitely got to come back here one time and spend some more time here. And so uh, then I came back. And then at the age of 30, 2 years later, 2005 is when I decided to go there and spend more time. I didn't anticipate that I'd been there as long as I had been there, but it kind of started from there. But let me go back again because your question was about YouTube. I'm
Yeah.
kind of like,
No, it's all
yeah,
good.
yeah, yeah.
It's
So
all
anyway,
together.
I to answer your question, I was in India when the YouTube thing started, but remember my first YouTube video was in Canada, right?
Okay.
So from India, I ended up getting a project in Canada to teach. So then I came to Canada already, even though I had already been living in India for about a year or a year and a half or so. And then that's when the YouTube stuff started. And it was actually the girl who had organized my classes there, who organized my workshops out there, Edmonton. she's the one who told me about the YouTube. She's like, you should put this stuff on YouTube. And I was like, okay, like, what's that? I don't know much about all this stuff. So she's the one who, yeah, she's the one who got me into it. And the thing is, I was at the same time at the studio every day. We'd go for a couple hours, and she would videotape me doing each move. Like, okay, this is called this, and I'd do the breakdown. So I made like 250 tutorials. I still have it on my hard disk. I
Really?
never post, I never posted it up though. I was just like, I did it because she asked it for a favor, and I was like, okay, yeah. But this one was in India. But
Okay.
Clayton, like 7, 8 years before that, I had shot like a ton of old school, hip hop and house tutorials. I think even top rock tutorials,
Okay.
and I never posted it. They're like, again, I still have them on my hard disk, but I didn't post it because I thought maybe, it would give less. I don't know. I thought maybe it would give less work to people or
Yeah.
teachers, and it wasn't fair to them and stuff. So I was like, you know what? I'll just keep it with me and just have it as memories. But yeah, those are some of what you're showing is some of the earlier days when I was out there in I think this is Edmonton, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Edmonton, yeah.
Yeah, Edmonton and then Calgary and stuff. So yeah, there was this girl, she had a camera and she shot it and she's like, you should put it on your YouTube channel. And I was like, okay, like cool, I'll
Crazy.
do it. I didn't realize how big YouTube would have been. And at that time, I think at that time there wasn't that much dance content on the internet. Yeah, I don't remember there being that much content,
I think
YouTube.
it was probably what's his name that was doing the waving, like that did that like little on the stage, like the battle that everybody was watching.
Okay.
I'm trying to remember, but he's like doing the body waves and stuff, and that was like one of the first ones. But again, I remember this like, probably about 2011, 2012. Obviously, this because Nate showed us like we were at practice, and I tried to be a b-boy, but I just wasn't a b-boy. I wasn't like I grew up with brothers and sisters that were your age, and my mom was listening to Motown, and so it was all the Bobby Brown and Michael Jackson, and
Right.
so that's why like when he showed me this, I was like, this is what I've been doing for years in the cyphers, just party dancing, like this is what I love. And he would put it in, his top rocks and his floor work and stuff, and to this day, everybody looks at him like, oh, yeah, like just that watching. Because we would watch him there, and then we'd be like, all right, let's practice, at a session.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm glad it was helpful because I made it. I mean, when I made it, I was actually back in India when I made those ones. But
Okay.
I made it because I knew a lot of kids in India didn't have access to come to the cities to learn or, so I put it out there thinking of them like, okay, at least it's something they can work with, even though they weren't like tutorials in a sense, like breaking it down. Okay, kick, step, back, step. Like I wasn't talking or breaking it down or really putting names to it. But it was like, again, it was useful for a lot of the people in India, but it was useful for, like you said, yourself, like you and your friends,
Sure.
or I've had people like in Europe tell me when I was teaching out there, like we learned a lot from these videos. I was like, oh, okay, cool. Like I'm happy they were so useful. And it was even to like uh uh Jojo Diggs had reached out to me and she was doing something for Steezy where her and her boyfriend were learning from the videos and stuff. So I was like, okay, cool, um, if it's helping people, and I've even seen it over the years. I've seen people like replicate those videos because I made it in like a series of 25, 30 steps in one video, and I've
Okay.
seen somebody put like 100 and something steps, and they just basically like copy pasted the whole thing. So I've seen a few people do
Wow.
it like in Brazil and India, and I think one person in Russia. So I'm like, cool, like I guess they just keep spreading it. So
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah,
it,
no,
my
it really has. Like, again, just to go back to it, like in those original years where a lot of the dance content was, it was there. It was still raw, like YouTube, trying to like understand everything, and you could put music up without copyrights,
yeah, yeah.
So like it wouldn't be blocked, but yeah, no, like Nate, obviously, he just said, thank you so much for the inspiration and knowledge.